Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be exploring something super fascinating. The future of English. It's like, how will we speak and write, years from now? Maybe even how we think could be totally different.
It's really quite remarkable how English is constantly changing,
Yeah,
but it seems like things are changing even faster these days.
definitely. So let's jump right in.
Sure.
Globalization.
Uh,
It's like a huge force shaping how we speak. It's bringing in all these new words from different languages.
it really is. It's almost like this global potluck of words, and we're, all adding our own little flavors to the mix.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
And it's not just about the words themselves. It's about, the cultures behind them.
exactly. Take a word like sushi, for
Okay.
example. It's become so common, we probably don't even think of it as a loan word anymore.
I know, right? It's just part of our everyday vocabulary.
Exactly. But it originally comes from Japanese. And sushi is just one example. Think about words like taco from Spanish or feng shui from Chinese.
Oh, an algorithm. That one's everywhere these days.
That's a good one. And these loanwords often reflect a deeper cultural exchange, too. It's like the word becomes a little window into another culture.
I love that. Like, you start using the word, then maybe you get curious about the culture it came from.
Precisely.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
But loanwords are really just the beginning, right? What about, like, the emergence of hybrid languages? Those are fascinating.
Absolutely. We're seeing the rise of some really interesting blends like Spanglish,
Oh, Spanglish, yeah.
which is a fusion of Spanish and English. It's especially common in communities where those two languages intersect a lot.
Makes sense.
And what's interesting is that Spanglish isn't just like randomly mixing words together.
It's more than that.
It often develops its own unique grammar and syntax. It's almost like a linguistic fingerprint of a specific cultural experience.
Wow, so it's not just slang. It's almost a language in its own right.
Yeah, I think you could say that. It's a really dynamic form of language.
That's pretty amazing. It makes me wonder, could we actually see like entirely new languages developing in the future,
Yeah.
maybe even from these hybrid forms?
It's definitely possible. Think about pidgins and creoles.
Okay.
These are languages that arise from mixing different languages together,
Right.
often in situations like trade or colonization.
Oh, interesting.
And they might start as simple ways to communicate, but over time, they can actually evolve into fully fledged languages.
I
So, yeah, it wouldn't be surprising to see new pidgins and creoles emerging, especially in places with a lot of different cultures and languages, like, big cities.
That is super fascinating. It's like language is constantly being created and recreated, especially when different cultures come together.
It really is.
Okay, I want to shift gears a bit. What about the influence of pop culture and internet slang?
Right.
That feels like a huge force shaping how we speak, especially among younger generations.
Absolutely. I mean, think about the word stan. It came from an Eminem song, and now it means like an obsessive fan.
Yeah.
And it's made its way into dictionaries.
Oh, that was crazy.
Or terms like oppa and tsundere from Korean and Japanese pop culture.
Yeah,
Those are gaining traction as K-dramas and anime become more global.
that's so true. It's funny because, slang used to be seen as this like underground language,
Hmm.
but now it feels like it's driving so much of the change in English. What do you think is fueling that?
I think social media plays a huge role.
Okay.
Platforms like TikTok and Twitter,
Right.
they thrive on brevity and things going viral.
Yeah.
And slang, with its short and often humorous nature, it just spreads like wildfire in those environments.
That makes sense.
Like yeet, simp, finsta. These terms capture a feeling or experience in a really concise way, which resonates with, the digital generation.
totally. And it's not just the words themselves, it's the way language is being used online. It's all
Mhm.
about like short, impactful phrases, almost like a new kind of shorthand.
Exactly. Think about the influence of memes, too.
Oh, yeah. Meme.
They convey, like, complex ideas or emotions with just an image or a few words.
Oh, true. Right.
And this trend towards visual communication and brevity, I think that might have a lasting impact on how we construct language in the future. Like, imagine seeing betwixt.
Betwixt.
Yeah, used unironically in a viral meme. It could actually bring back old-fashioned words in a totally unexpected way.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I can totally picture a betwixt meme going viral. But speaking of change, what about pronunciation? Do you think we're all going to end up sounding the same because of, global media?
It's a really fascinating question.
Yeah.
Some linguists believe that, with all this exposure to different accents through things like movies, music, the internet,
Yeah.
it could lead to like a blending of those regional dialects. But on the other hand, as the world becomes more globalized, some people argue that people might actually hold on even more tightly to their regional accents. Like it becomes a way of preserving their cultural identity.
Interesting. So it's kind of like a linguistic tug of war.
Yeah, I think you could say that.
So in the future, we might hear a mix of global accents, or we might hear even stronger regional dialects.
Exactly. It's hard to predict for sure.
It's mind-blowing.
Okay.
But there's another player in the pronunciation game, right? Artificial intelligence.
Oh, yes. AI. That's a
Uh,
big one. Think about how we interact with virtual assistants like Siri or Alexa.
Yeah,
They often have a very neutral, almost generic accent.
that's true.
Could that lead to like the emergence of a standardized digital accent that people start mimicking?
Oh, wow. Like everyone starts talking like their smartphone?
Exactly, or even stranger. Could we see the rise of AI English?
AI English. What's that?
Like a simplified version of English that's optimized for talking to machines.
Okay, now that is a fascinating thought.
It is, isn't it?
But let's move on to the written word for a second.
Okay.
Grammar and spelling. It seems like they're getting a bit more relaxed online. Would you say?
It's definitely true. The rules of written English, they're changing, especially online.
Yeah. It's like the Wild West out there.
It really is. And think about this.
Okay?
Predictive text and autocorrect,
Ugh. Yes.
they're constantly like pushing us towards certain spellings and grammar,
Yeah.
whether they're technically correct or not.
I know. Sometimes I feel like I'm like battling autocorrect just to, use proper grammar.
Yeah.
But do you think this more relaxed approach online, could it actually lead to like formal changes in English?
Well, it's already happening.
Really?
Think about abbreviations like LOL and OMG.
Yeah, okay.
They're so common now that they're in dictionaries.
Wow.
So, it wouldn't be surprising to see other internet abbreviations like IDK and TBH.
ValDK, TBH.
Yeah, follow suit.
I guess it makes sense. Language evolves to reflect, how people actually use it.
Right.
And let's be honest, we're all using a lot more abbreviations and emojis these days.
We are.
But, some people might argue that this is like dumbing down the language. What do you think about that?
It's an interesting debate for sure. Some people see it as a decline in standards,
Yeah.
while others see it as, natural evolution, just adapting to how we communicate online, which is very fast-paced and informal.
Right, yeah.
Like shorthand, right? Using id instead of, I don't know, it's efficient,
Makes sense.
especially in like texting or something.
Yeah.
But the real question is, will this informality start to show up in like more formal writing?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Well, even if it doesn't make it into like academic papers anytime soon, there's no denying that visual communication is like everywhere.
It really is.
Emojis, memes, GIFs. It almost feels like a whole new language is developing.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Imagine a future where emojis aren't just, fun little additions to our text messages, but actually an integral part of written English. Instead of writing "the world is a beautiful place," you could write "the A is a beautiful place."
Whoa, that's really cool. It's concise, it's visually striking. It could even help people who speak different languages understand each other.
Exactly.
But what about like the nuances of meaning?
Yeah.
Emojis can be interpreted in different ways, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. Context is key, just like with any language.
Right.
But think about it. We already use emojis to convey tone and emotion in our digital communication.
Yeah, that's true.
A laughing emoji can soften a message that might seem harsh.
Yeah.
Or a heart emoji can express affection.
Yeah.
And as we become more fluent in emoji, so to speak,
Yeah.
we might develop even more sophisticated ways of using them to express really subtle shades of meaning.
It's like we're like expanding the emotional vocabulary of written language.
I think you're right.
That's so cool. But emojis are just one aspect of visual communication, right?
Yeah.
What about the impact of like memes and internet humor? Could that actually change how we use language?
It's already happening. I mean, internet memes, they often rely on wordplay, puns, ironic humor.
Yeah.
And these linguistic devices are kind of making their way into our everyday conversations, even influencing things like marketing and advertising.
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about how many times you've seen a brand, use a popular meme format to try to connect with younger people.
Oh, yeah, they do that all the time. It's true. It's like memes have become uh, this shared language,
Yeah.
a way of expressing ourselves and connecting with others through humor,
Yeah, through shared experiences.
Shared experiences,
Yeah.
exactly. But let's not forget about, like, the bigger picture,
Okay.
the broader societal forces that are shaping language. We talked about globalization, pop culture, but what about the growing emphasis on, like, inclusivity and social justice?
That's a really crucial aspect of how language evolves. As our understanding of gender, identity, social equality, all these things change.
Right.
So does the language we use to reflect those values.
Yeah.
Like the adoption of gender-neutral pronouns like they, them.
Oh, they, them, okay.
It's a great example. It's a way of acknowledging and respecting individuals who, don't identify with the traditional gender binary.
Right, yeah.
And it's not just about pronouns either. There's this growing awareness of potentially offensive terminology
Yeah.
and a movement to like reclaim or redefine words that have, problematic origins. It's like we're actively working to make language more inclusive and equitable.
I love that. Like, we're actually shaping language to make it more
Yeah.
reflective of our values.
Exactly. And that's where individual choices really matter.
Yeah.
Every time we choose to use inclusive language, we're contributing to, a more just and respectful society. It's a reminder that language has power and we have a responsibility to use it wisely.
Well said. Okay, let's talk about another powerful force shaping language: technology. It's already having a massive impact, but it feels like we're only just getting started.
I agree. We talked about how AI is influencing pronunciation, the rise of visual communication.
All right.
But it goes much deeper than that. Just look at how words like algorithm, machine learning, blockchain,
Yeah.
they've gone from being a niche tech jargon to like everyday conversation.
It's true. And as these technologies become like more integrated into our lives, I can only imagine we'll see more and more technical terms becoming, part of our everyday vocabulary. It's like we're constantly expanding the dictionary to keep up with all the new stuff.
We are. And it's not just new words. Think about how AI is already changing how we interact with information.
Yeah.
We're used to typing, search queries into Google.
Right.
But now we're using voice commands to ask our virtual assistants for information.
Hey Siri, weather.
Exactly. And this shift from text to voice, it could have a huge impact on how we structure sentences, even the types of words we use.
Interesting. So instead of typing, "What's the weather like today?"
Yeah.
we might just say, "Hey Siri, weather."
Exactly. It's definitely more concise.
Yeah.
But could it also lead to a less nuanced way of expressing ourselves?
That's a good point. Like, are we losing something in the process?
Some linguists worry about that. That over-reliance on AI-powered communication could lead to, like, a simplification of language,
Yeah.
a loss of that richness and complexity that, makes human communication so unique.
I see.
But others argue that it's just a new way of adapting, like a way of streamlining communication for our fast-paced digital world.
Right. It's like, yeah, it's a trade-off.
It is.
Finding that balance between, the efficiency of technology and the depth of human language.
Precisely. And that's where this concept of AI English comes in.
Oh, right. AI English.
Imagine like a streamlined version of English that's designed specifically for talking to machines. It would probably be more concise, less ambiguous, and rely heavily on like keywords and logical structures.
So are you saying we might end up speaking one language to each other and a whole other language to our devices?
It's possible.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that create like a digital divide between people who are fluent in this AI English and those who aren't?
That's a valid concern. And it raises important questions about, accessibility and equity.
Yeah.
Especially as technology becomes more and more intertwined with language.
Yeah. It's something to definitely think about.
It is.
Well, we've talked about a lot today.
We have.
Loanwords, slang, emojis, AI English. Seems like the future of English is going to be a pretty wild ride.
It does, doesn't it?
But before we wrap up, I want to bring up one more potential change. And this one might be the most mind-blowing of all. Imagine a world where, like, all of our online interactions,
Okay.
our social media posts, our text messages, all that scrolling, what if it starts to affect how we actually think?
That's a really interesting thought. We know that the language we use can shape how we see the world.
Totally.
But what happens when language itself is, changing so rapidly because of the digital world?
It's like, what if our brains start adapting to like how we communicate online?
Yeah.
Short bursts of information, tons of visuals,
Right.
constantly switching between topics. Could that like lead to shorter attention spans? Or maybe even a preference for images over text? Could it even change how we process like really complex ideas?
It's certainly possible. There's this whole field called digital linguistics.
Digital linguistics. Okay.
It's looking at how our interaction with technology is, impacting our cognitive processes, how we think.
That's so cool.
Some researchers believe that, the constant stimulation and multitasking we do online, it could actually be rewiring our brains,
Rewiring our brains. Wow.
making us better at processing information quickly, but maybe
Yeah.
less patient with deeper, more reflective thinking.
Hmm. So it's like, on the one hand, we might become super efficient at processing information. Like we can skim through tons of data and get the key points really fast.
Right.
But on the other hand, we might struggle to like focus on one thing for a long time or
Wow.
really grapple with, complex ideas that need a lot of attention.
Exactly. It's a trade-off. And it brings up some really important questions about, the future of education.
Education, yeah.
If students are growing up in this world where their brains are kind of wired for digital communication,
Yeah.
how do we change our teaching methods to, keep them engaged, help them develop those critical thinking skills?
That is a really good point. It's almost like we need to find a way to connect like the fast-paced, fragmented world of online communication
Yeah.
with that like deeper, more thoughtful world of critical thinking and analysis.
I think you're right. And I think a big part of that is media literacy.
Okay, media literacy.
Teaching people how to, really look at the information they see online, to recognize biases, to be able to tell the difference between, credible sources and misinformation.
So it's not just about like reading things quickly. It's about really understanding what you're reading and how it might be trying to influence you.
Exactly.
So in a way, the future of English, it's not just about the words themselves. It's about how we use those words to like think, to reason, to make good decisions.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Especially in this world where things are just getting more and more complex.
Yeah.
It's about developing a kind of digital fluency that goes beyond just like knowing how to use the latest app or social media platform.
It really does. It's about being mindful, critical, and adaptable in a world where, language and technology are constantly changing and influencing each other.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap things up. We've covered so much in this deep dive, from globalization and slang to artificial intelligence and how it might even change, like how we think. The future of English is going to be quite a ride.
It really is.
But it's up to all of us to, navigate those changes thoughtfully and responsibly.
Absolutely. And I'd encourage everyone listening to, embrace this evolution, to stay curious about language, and to remember that at the end of the day, language is a tool for connection, for understanding, for creating a more just and equitable world.
I love that. Well, that's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this linguistic adventure.
Until next time, keep exploring.